Hi everyone, welcome to week 9 of CAT125R. This week your lecture materials will focus on ethics, and for our intro video this week we're going to look at some specific strategies for you to use as you are working on your collaborative curation assignment. So you've put a lot of work into the course so far, and we're really in the home stretch here as you are putting together your groups for the collaborative curation assignment and working together on collecting and analyzing your sources. These are some primary strategies that you're going to want to keep in mind as you develop the project. First, you want to respond to a specific question. Second, you want to identify a specific audience for your Storify project. And third, you want to guide your audience through your sources. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some examples of previous projects from CAT125 and look at how these projects went ahead with using the strategies we just described here. So first, responding to a specific question. In this example, we see that the group narrowed down their topic significantly from the really big topic of music and intellectual property down a bit smaller into streaming music, and then even smaller into a question about the consumer's ethical obligations regarding the use of streaming music services, paid for versus free streaming music services. So not only is this question specific in its focus, it also allows the group to take a position. In this case, the position they ended up taking is that consumers should in fact use subscription-based pay-for streaming services. So when you come up with your research question for the Storify project, you want to make sure that it's not just a simple yes or no answer that would respond to that question. You also want to make sure that it's not just a simple factual answer that would be the response. Instead, you really want to be able to make a claim in response to your question or take some kind of position and support it with your researched evidence. Another strategy to use for the Storify project is to identify a specific audience. In determining who your audience should be for the Storify, beyond, of course, those of us who are involved in the class, try to consider or identify who the stakeholders are in relation to your topic or your research question. In other words, who is affected by this issue? So in this sample, where the students worked on a project about remixed music, you can see that they identified a very specific audience for their project of music producers as well as singers. And I've circled a section of the Storify here where they identify that audience. And in coming up with that more specific audience, that really gave a concrete shape to their whole project. Because what they ended up doing, you can see they propose it here at the end of this paragraph. What they end up doing is really offering practical strategies for those audience members on how to fairly and ethically use other people's music in their own projects. So here's another example. You can see that in this group's Storify header, they identify a specific audience, in this case, derivative work artists. So what this group ended up focusing on was photography and artists who take existing photographs and modify them to create new art. So again, by identifying this specific audience, the group was able to tailor the direction that the project goes, both in the source selection and in how they discuss the relevance of those sources, as everything gets filtered through, well, what would be the most relevant to this audience who is composed of individuals who are making this type of artwork. Another really important strategy is to guide your audience through your sources. So we're going to take a look at this particular sample and how these group members walk the audience very carefully from one source to another. So this is something that you may be familiar with already from writing more traditional research papers, It's your way to avoid what the Stedman article from last week calls the roadkill, right, and the annoying ways people use sources. So you're avoiding that sort of just plopping down random sources, which can be kind of tempting with the Storify platform because it's so simple just to drag and drop sources in. But what you really need to do is walk your reader through those sources and explain their relevance. So let's take a look at how this group does it. So here they have what you're looking at here is sort of the area in between two sources. So the previous source provided a definition of intellectual property, and in that definition, the group identified a conflict that exists now in the age of the internet. So they say here, can you see the conflict? So that's wrapping up the commentary on a previous source. Then they introduce the next source that they're planning to discuss. And you want to introduce that source with some kind of relevant context. In this case, they provide the relevant context of the author's credibility, and then they're also connecting it to that previous source. So how this respected author is grappling with this conflict that exists in intellectual property law. Next, they provide some commentary on the source. So they're really focusing in on one of the main points that the author makes. They say here his strongest point. And then finally, after discussing that source, they set up the connection to the next source that's coming up in the Storify project, so that these laws need an overhaul, and that's where the next source is going. So you can see here that the text that this group wrote builds connections between the sources and helps the audience see how these sources relate to one another in connection to the overall theme and research question for the project. The final strategy to keep in mind as you're working on these projects is to take advantage of Storify's multimedia platform. So unlike a traditional research paper where you're limited to just written text, here you have a whole host of opportunities in the form of visual images, sound, video. So let's take a look at a couple of examples to see how these groups take advantage of those media. So here we're going back to the example we talked about just a minute ago regarding derivative use artists, individuals who take photographs and modify them to create new art. So of course this is a project that will really benefit from the inclusion of visual media. So the group has included photographs that are examples of this kind of work. So here we have two original photographs that were then combined into this third derivative work. And then the group also takes advantage, I'll scroll down here, they're discussing an important case, an important intellectual property case, and they use this GIF to demonstrate the original work and the derivative work to show the difference between the two. And this difference, the amount of this difference was very significant in the legal case they're discussing. So here having this GIF, which shows how similar or different the two are depending on your view of the case, really helps illuminate what they're talking about in the text of the Storify. And this project on memes and intellectual property takes advantage of the multimedia platform that Storify offers by not only including, of course, an example of a meme, but also a video, right? They've embedded a video here, a how-to on how to make a meme. And then as well as more traditional text-based sources like this legal article on the relationship between memes and intellectual property. So keep these strategies in mind as your groups are working on your curation projects, and you can take a look at the links in these slides if you want to take a closer look at any of the samples. And if you have questions as you are continuing the projects, as always, you can get in touch with me via email or my office hours. Have a good week and good luck with the curation projects.